I am Marisa Fagan, currently the product manager at Catalyst, which is a security champions as a service company, but we are very interested in making more resources for how to deploy culture change in your organization. And SAMM is an important part of that because we want to illustrate how culture is an essential part of that. And I, in my previous life, have worked with BSIM, so I was unfortunately on the dark side. I had come to it with that frame of reference, but I am looking to migrate. So in preparation for giving this talk, I have completed my SAMM Fundamentals course, and I am now certified. I got my certificate from the internet, so I think that's all it takes. And I would like to translate the things that I know about how to do change management using culture as the driver, mapping it to these controls. So here we have today, follow the SAMM map to find the elusive culture fit goals. But first, I just wanted to set a little backstory about why I'm here today. My colleague Dustin Lair was giving a presentation in the San Francisco version of this conference, the OWASP SAMM Day San Francisco in the year 2024. And he gave a presentation called Security Champions, an OWASP SAMM Level Booster. And I wanted to bring back a few of those slides. I know this is a little unusual, but they're just so good. I want this to be the foundation for the talk. So Dustin reminded us last year that for every maturity effort, it is built on a foundation of relationships. So whether that's relationships with your stakeholders or relationships with your peers, a strong relationship to your organization, you cannot do anything else until that is a strong foundation. And Dustin brought up the point that the security team cannot do this alone. We need to influence others. As a matter of logistics, as a matter of practice, we cannot do this without making partnerships with other teams. So talking about, this is still part of Dustin's previous talk, but I just thought it was so good to frame what we need to say to take this a step further this year. So a reminder that we have this bell curve of innovation, that you have innovators at the beginning, that 15% of the early adopters and innovators are the first people to adopt change. So if you need to roll out a new initiative, if you need to level up your security controls, you need to change what's happening at your organization, remember that strong foundation of partnerships. People are the first adopters of this change, and you need to get 15% of the organization on board before you can cross the chasm to effective adoption. So that chasm is about 15%, depending on how large your organization is. That's a lot of work. And we're going to talk today about how to get those people on board to become your early adopters and how to enable them, because without that, the change cannot happen. And so once again, Dustin presented this slide and talked about culture change. And I just saw this slide last year and I was like, we got to come back to that. What about each of those red circles is a culture shift that is required? What can champions contribute? And so there wasn't enough time last year to go through each of these one by one, but we promised that we would come back this year and go through each of them one by one. And that is what I'm here to do today. So you all are passionate about this, this control list. I probably wouldn't get the airtime to do this in any other place, so I'm so grateful and excited to do it with you all here. And we can geek out about these specific things. And I thought, let's make it fun, and we'll do it together as a treasure hunt. And we're going to go through each of these different sections one by one, starting with education and guidance. So is anybody saying GEGA? You all know GEGA, right? Okay, so GEGA, first level, 100% coverage in SDLC training of developers. This is the most, we're starting with the easiest one. The easiest thing to translate in your mind to how you need people to make a culture change, to adopt this practice. It's not so hard to understand developers are needing training. This is clearly what we're comfortable calling a culture initiative. But I just thought we'd go over it anyway. So make sure that you have, for 100% coverage of training for developers, that is difficult. You have your 15% early adopters, but you have a 15% group of laggards as well that are skeptical and uninterested in taking your training. So this is where culture is extremely important for you to get the marks on your SAMM score here. The training needs to be customized to your environment. And make sure that you are using an LMS tool that is connected to your org chart as a source of truth. Automatic reminder notifications are essential for this project. I should say here that I will share these slides later. All of these marks are going to be extremely actionable and specific, and going through them all like this, don't worry about taking notes. I know that there's going to be a lot here to cover. So GEGB, the organization and culture control, is 100% coverage of security champions per team. So here I wanted to point out something that's near and dear to my heart. One of the things about security champions programs that I would say from the start is you need an official list. This list needs to be maintained. It needs to be trustworthy, and potentially it needs to be an asset that can be pinged, maybe through an API, to talk about who are your champions. And then champions have responsibilities. So this is a pretty complicated measure for level 1, and it gets more complicated from there. So having that really good baseline or foundation for your security champions program is really important. And it comes through either using a tool or having an organization system for managing your champions. The second level, Secure Software Center of Excellence, has been socialized and approved by devs. So this is going to be a reoccurring theme in the rest of this guidance, is socialize the initiative with the stakeholders. So it's not enough for the security team to have created a design. If you didn't get input from the other parts of the business, it doesn't socialize, it doesn't create a culture change, it doesn't convince your early adopters, 15% of people, to breach the chasm and create culture change. It'll fall flat, if not immediately, eventually, without that. Level 3, you need a communications portal. Again, this is clearly a culture initiative. A communications portal can be a Slack channel, but make sure it's moderated. Do not just create a Slack channel, set it and forget it, and it'll be quiet, and it was worse than having done nothing at all. You need a moderator, a person to sit in the Slack channel and make sure everybody is getting their questions answered in a timely fashion. All right, on to threat assessment. In application risk profiling, level 1, I wanted to highlight the cultural aspect of this one. Socialize the app inventory with stakeholders and make this an exercise to prioritize apps as a team. So you're crowdsourcing prioritization from the owners of the apps. It's a conversation that I think we have tried to automate our way through and do discovery with app inventory tools, and we are completely missing the exercise that is doing an app inventory with the app owners, because they will be able to give you information that they might not realize was important, but without that conversation, you're skipping an essential value to create buy-in and culture change with this initiative. Again is a missed opportunity. It's not a requirement, it's an opportunity to do training on how risk is decided. So what is the prioritization technique that you're using to prioritize your app inventory? Teach that to the app owners, and they will be able to weigh in on whether that feels like a good system or not of prioritization. You know, we can talk about exploitability and perimeter and how the app ecosystem actually works. You might have a bunch of opinions about that, but without actually talking to the stakeholders and to the app owners, you can't know for sure. And so this is an opportunity for, again, getting buy-in and making your 15% of your organization really feel like they helped you build this together. And then level 2, it's not enough to have a risk inventory if nobody has access to it. People that got training should have access to the app inventory's risk prioritization and profiling so that it can provide a sense of ownership, but also a gut check that these are up-to-date and correct profiles. And then something I'll talk a lot about in this short presentation is the overlap with GRC tools functionality-wise. So level 3, share the responsibility of updating the risk profiles with a GRC tool that can manage control owners and assign tasks to these owners. So you'll have risk profiles that will have expiring profile update tasks, and it's much easier to have a very large number of risk profiles that have expiration dates once a year, and you don't have to herd cats and track down 100 people because you've got your GRC tool doing that for you. So that's an example of how to manage this sort of the group of people that you need to get together to do the application risk profiling initiative correctly. Moving on to threat modeling. There's so much here that you could do, but I picked a few things. So with threat modeling, to get level 1, you want to pick a simple model and then enable the tools for people across the organization to actually use it. This should not be a gatekeeping exercise. Threat modeling should not be an ivory tower thing that only the security team knows how to do. There needs to be different kinds of threat modeling done by everyone in the organization. And this is where I've pointed out that that can be customized. It needs to feel native to your organization. It needs to feel hyper-specific and relevant to what the apps in your organization look like. It's that look and feel. People can smell when something was made for them versus a tool that was just bought off the shelf, off the box, and not customized for their needs and purposes. The biggest reaction that you're going to have to that is they will just not understand how to use the tool, and it will be a bad experience. Again, technically you don't need to do this, but it's a missed opportunity to not do it that way. And then level 2, train everyone on the process to create and make those diagrams. The threat modeling diagrams need to be updated, in real time. They should always be up to date, and that is an almost impossible task for one team to be responsible for. But if everyone was responsible for it, it becomes a very small thing to do. Level 3, make the stakeholders a part of the process for maturing the threat modeling practices. So getting feedback on whether your selected model, if it's Stride, if you're doing something that is well documented like Stride, but it doesn't really resonate with your users, that feedback and getting them to be a part of the process is a step that I think can sometimes go missed when you buy an off-the-shelf solution for threat modeling. Is this style of going through these things resonating so far? Okay, because I've got more. And again, the point here is a map to how to get that culture change element. Without culture change, you don't have change. You don't have change management. You don't have maturing to the next level. You can't mature without change. You can't change without people. Great. On to security architecture. So in the architecture design step, there's a requirement for a security principles artifact. And I'm going to say it again and again. The step that you're missing here is socialize the artifact. Call for feedback from the developers and have input into these principles that will decide their fate forever after. They should get a say in what those principles are and how many there are and whether this is a reasonable set of expectations. And actually, maybe there are things that you haven't thought of that are more tangible. There's not any reason that they wouldn't be able to participate in the design of your security principles. And again, it's an opportunity. It's a value add to do this, not just because it makes the document better, but it makes people feel more invested, and invested people carry through and they pull change with them, and they make the program better in ways that you won't be able to predict. They will take that buy-in to the trenches where you won't be able to go, and it spreads throughout the organization. A much more organic and effective way to spread change in something like principles, which are kind of a top-down, you should do this kind of mentality. Having messengers take that message to places you can't go is extremely effective. Security services. The security services need a friendly user experience. If you're designing for a customer, get the customer's feedback on whether it's working well or not. And then the documentation for security services needs to live where engineers put their documentation. The secret security risk confluence space is not an appropriate place for documentation that you want engineers to look at. Level 3 reference architecture docs. Those need to have owners who understand maintenance cadence. And again, whether it's that GRC tool that we looked at before or a different tool, Confluence has its own feature for expiring artifacts. When documents are too old, they need to expire, change color, and be maintained and get somebody to look at them. That's not just a security control, it's also a user experience control. You lose credibility when you have old, out-of-date documents, and credibility hurts your reputation, and that hurts your ability to make change, which hurts your ability to mature. So it's possible that a 5 whys exercise about why you haven't been able to mature in the SAMM program is actually because of a culture problem, if you follow my logic here. So technology management. Evaluating and maintaining a technology inventory is a huge project. Don't do it alone. If you even thought you could. This is a big stakeholder collaboration project. We need representation in a Tiger team from all parts of the organization, and that collective of people, that Tiger team, is its own kind of team now, and they need to function as a group. So that, another really good place for your early adopters, those 15% or security champions that have raised their hand and say that they are bought in, is a great use for those people. Level 2, socialize the paved road for approved technologies. Does everyone resonate with the expression paved road? We all are familiar with? Oh, great. So Netflix has a document that they have published where they are calling their set of approved services and technologies and tools, they call it the paved road. And anything you do on the paved road doesn't require approval. It doesn't require security to be involved. You are ready to go as fast as you want to go. However, if you want to use a different architecture, a different framework, if you want to bring in a tool that's not on the approved vendor list, you are off the paved road and you need to apply for a permit or whatever the metaphor extends to. So socializing a approved list of services, technologies, and vendors versus having that there's a fast lane and a slow lane, and there are options. The power of giving people options means they will pick one of those options. It's called libertarian paternalism. So the power of giving people 2 or 3 approved options versus having them make up their own strategy. This is a technique that works very well. And then I made the kind of side note that if you're setting yourself up to be the approver of technologies and you're trying to make an approved list, approve whenever possible. Every time you say no is hurting your credibility. It hurts your social capital. So make strides to make those requests okay wherever possible, because the times when you do have to say no is really going to cost you because you have set yourself up as a gatekeeper. So in order to keep your champions happy, in order to keep your early adopters adopting, you want to make sure that they feel validated and that their requests are heard and they are being said yes to. And then I highlighted the word transparent here. Make all of your enforcement capabilities transparent. You do not want to be the people that have to say no and no one understands why. These reasons should be very transparently documented. And then there should also be a support help desk. I'm not sure if everyone thinks of themselves like this, but we are in a support organization. We support the engineering org, we support the business in doing businessing. So this is really what our teams should be designed for, is excellent customer support. On to defect management. Defect tracking is best when it's a system that is accessible by everyone. This is controversial. We can talk later about whether you think I'm wrong, but I have seen the positive effects of giving people trust when talking about access to the defect tracking system. It's most likely that people won't have any interest and they won't use it at all, but sometimes you can find your security champions in this way. When you find people that are looking for more responsibility, often the first place they try to look is like, well, what's available to me? And then they try to come in kind of through the back door to become a security champion. SLA status is public and have training for everyone on SLAs. So again, it's more like, why do we use the SLAs we use? Do we have customers that have written it into a contract? It really feels arbitrary to have a SLA, an agreed, SLA is agreed service level agreement. The limits for how quickly you need to close defects, the limits for how long can an issue stand outstanding before it needs to be reported to customers. All of that is very opaque to developers until we explain it. So training, I have found, is a very good way to get people on board with what you're doing. It's specific training on the processes. And it's a public thing. Okay, so here I just wanted to remind everyone that you really need a no blame culture, a blameless culture. Celebrate cool bugs, celebrate interesting bugs, celebrate the way that it got closed quickly. Don't focus on the root cause of who did what, who left their code comments in and it made it to production. Focus on whether it was an interesting remediation story. Celebrate the successes. And a reminder, it's kind of like eating broccoli, but everybody should be doing retrospectives to improve the process, not necessarily to point fingers at one person that did the wrong thing. And then, again, another shout out to security champions. Security champions should be that interface to support the teams on meeting those agreed upon SLAs for closing vulnerabilities and defects. This is, hopefully I'm painting the picture here, process that is very human driven. People are often the bottleneck. And so to not have people bought into that process and build it with them is probably why there's so much friction and it takes as long as it does. But if it was a process they felt ownership of, you would see a big change. Metrics and feedback. Another controversial thing here, in my training, I think I've seen that in the SAMM documentation, it talks about quick wins should be identified by the security team, but I wanted to change that. So it's on record. So this is the new definition for metrics and feedback level 1. Metrics and feedback level 1 now says quick wins should be identified by devs. If you have security champions with some security training, they have the context better than the security team to identify quick wins. They probably have a list that they have been waiting for somebody to ask them about. So quick wins means short path to close. Quick is different than low-hanging fruit. In my mind, quick wins is something that people already have designed and are ready to do, and that's why it's quick. Whereas low-hanging fruit is something that was simple, regardless of whether it's been thought about before or completely ignored. So low-hanging fruit, which is different than a quick win, low-hanging fruit is what I think the standard is talking about when they say quick wins. I want to just clarify, low-hanging fruit should be automated by the security team. Solving for that should be easy because it's well understood, it's low-hanging fruit, and you'll win a lot of credibility with the developers if you can take that off of their plate, and that's the sort of an example of building credibility and social capital with this group of stakeholders. In level 2, you want to have metrics that are reported to the executives. The metrics should be socialized with storytelling. That's just a little suggestion, another little tweak on how I would phrase some of these measurements. And then 3, get feedback from every org when you're doing your annual metrics analysis. So you're rewriting what the metric measurements are and deciding whether they still serve you. Go on a roadshow and actually get the feedback from every stakeholder and org when you're doing this annual review. It's a step that is often missed. On to architecture assessment. Architecture validation is another place where cultural change and investing in your early adopters at your organization can be the difference between success and failure. So have security champions take the first pass at a general security mechanisms at that ad hoc part of the process. And then at level 2, it get a little more formal, make an agreed upon process for maintaining architecture diagrams with the owners. So security teams shouldn't be the owner of any architecture diagrams. And so of course you want to work with the teams that are the owners. And then it's in between the lines there, but you'll find you probably won't be able to do that without training. So number 3, yearly security control assessment should be socialized with a readout org-wide. And this is purely a people thing. It's recognition and validation and celebration for the people that spent so much time invested in making these things a success. Every business unit in the company should see themselves in this readout. Find a way to tell the story of how every different business unit or department in the company did some piece of making you a success in adopting and following and complying with your security controls and policies. So that's a fun thing to do, to have kind of a celebration of your yearly control assessment. Architecture mitigation, the first level. Again, here I'm kind of tweaking it slightly and suggesting that you need security champions, and those security champions should take the first pass at the general threat analysis. And then at level 2, then you have security experts leading the interviews. And again, I'm encouraging you, don't do this in a silo. Get out there, talk to the stakeholders, do this as interviews. Do not do this as heads down research. And you might think that it's not necessary. You understand the information. And again, I'm trying to point out that it's not about you. It's about making the people that are the recipients of your reports feel invested. It's about their experience with the security team and letting them weigh in and give feedback and have an opportunity to participate in this process. It's very possible that you could probably get the right answers without talking to them, but that would be a missed opportunity. And then reference architecture documentation should be verified by security experts. And then again, kind of a GRC style, anything documentation should expire and should be reviewed in a process-oriented fashion. And then you should train, either train security champions or train stakeholders in a safe process for changing this documentation directly so that you can crowdsource this initiative and spread the work around. And your security experts don't have to be bogged down with this kind of bureaucratic function. Many hands make light work, they say. Okay, Aram, will you keep me aware of time?
7 minutes.
Okay, we are not going to get through all of this. I will definitely make it available. If you find me on LinkedIn, I will post the link, and also we can share it, I'm sure, with the group.
Yeah, all the slides will be shared. I think I mentioned this
Yeah.
on the website.
I will do incident management, and then I maybe could take 4 minutes for questions instead of doing the last section. So I loved that incident management was something I got to talk about here, because at an application security conference, we often don't get to spend enough time talking about incident management and the people and process that goes into PCERT. Very exciting topic to talk about. But there's so much to talk about that I just put a big pin in it. And I just said, for incident detection, just use incident data for storytelling and be sure to celebrate the positive trends with the whole org, kind of how we talked about doing a readout earlier. For incident response, this is one of the biggest opportunities that people are missing to build culture and to have people get bought into the security process. It's the most exciting, it's the most time sensitive, and it brings a sense of urgency that maybe some of us love about our job. It expands that into all of the different departments. So you need, in an incident response exercise, you need security team, IT, legal, communications, engineering leadership, and there's probably more people, security champions. All of these groups need to all come together very quickly, sometimes in less than 24 hours. So you need to have like a point of contact system, and those points of contacts need alternates. This is a very complicated system, and it needs to be practiced. So I love a tabletop simulation, or if you're lucky, you can run it with the red team, and you'll have a P-cert tabletop exercise, pull in legal and communications and engineering, all of these folks. Again, it's not so much for your benefit, but for their benefit to bring in and expose working with you to those people, because they have not been living with this every day. They need to see what this is like. So it's about keeping everybody's muscles ready, and when the big day comes where you need to run an incident, everyone will be ready to go. And then do a readout of your red team simulation or your tabletop exercise. Practice like you play, and remember, it is a no blame culture. Celebrate participation. If you have somebody that was the focus point of a targeted attack, maybe they were spearphished, that is just, it could have been anybody. That person is never mentioned by name, but in private, they are thanked for their participation. They are not blamed. So I have so many more slides. There's plenty more. Now I just gave everybody a head spin, but is there any particular thing that I could answer questions about?